in anchoring and adjustment, so the anchoring heuristic, the point is that when we make judgments, we often find some kind of an initial rough starting point. So when we, for instance, try to gauge the numerical size of something, we start at some initial value. And this initial value is what we would call an anchor. And then we adjust our estimate during the course of our judgment or our decision process to arrive at our final judgment. And this adjustment of our belief is typically not sufficient, and it leads to judgments being distorted in the direction of the starting value. So that's the explanation of the anchoring heuristic. If we get a specific starting value, the estimate that we will produce in the end will be biased by that starting value, because we can't quite overcome this starting value. So let's take a look at an example for this. Here in the study by Critcher and Gilovich, participants were asked to judge what the chances are that a certain player sacks the quarterback in the next game. And they were shown pictures, either of the same player, and the thing that varied was the probability, it was the number displayed on the jersey. So either the player was the player with the jersey number 54, or it was the player with the jersey number 94. And below that, you can see the probability estimates for the player sacking the quarterback, so for making an important play in the next game. And if you know nothing about these two players, you should make the exact same. You should make the exact same estimate, right? You would say, well, this guy looks strong, so maybe there's a 60% probability. I don't know. But importantly, that should be independent of the jersey number, right? Because the jersey number doesn't say anything about the quality of the player. What we find instead is that people do produce a lower estimate for the lower jersey number. So the player with the lower jersey number is assigned a lower probability of winning than the player with a higher jersey number. And you can see it's the exact same player, right? So it seems like this original anchor, or the starting value that we put in participants' minds while they make some estimate, in this case, it can pull their estimate either downwards or upwards. Right, and that is the principle behind the anchoring heuristic. So to summarize, let's take a look again at the three most important types of heuristics that we can talk about. We have the representativeness heuristic, where this is about the tendency to judge events as congruent with an existing stereotype or prototype or expectation. So the more representative an object is of its category, the more likely we think it occurs. We've spoken about the availability heuristic. So in this case, we would think that the ease by which information comes to mind influences our judgments. And then the anchoring heuristic would suggest that numeric values can be used as starting points for judgments. These are, however, only very few examples of all the heuristics, and biases that are actually being researched out there. So there's a huge number of many models and theories about how decision-making is not quite rational, but is only quasi-rational and uses heuristics and biases. So if you take a little expedition to Wikipedia and you just punch in list of cognitive biases, you will see that there's a huge list of distortions in our perception when it comes to cognition. And then this perhaps brings home the point that I tried to make in the beginning, which is that if we only compare rational strategies against any type of not rational, quasi-rational strategy, the rational strategy always has to lose out, because there's so many ways in which people can be not quite rational, but still systematic. And that's why it's really important that if you compare rational versus quasi-rational behavior, you always pick a specific prediction of what you think how the quasi-rational behavior should work, if it's indeed quasi-rational. Okay. So that's it for representativeness, anchoring and adjustment, and the availability heuristic. And next up, we will take a look at prospect theory.